I realized that even though Minerva is known as a metrics layer, the true power and what made Minerva successful was that it was a democratic transformation framework, right? Because without good data, you can't have good metrics, right? Bad data in would be bad data out. And so Minerva really empowered analysts and scientists to be able to very easily define large-scale transformations to then consume in the metrics layer. So DBT is great, don't get me wrong, but there's no state and everything is just a script and you just kind of run your Jinja SQL, right? So if you're familiar with the DevOps space, it's kind of like Chef or something like that, right? Where you kind of tell it exactly what to do and it just does it blindly. SQLMesh, on the other hand, is stateful. It understands SQL and kind of is more declarative. So it's more like Terraform. And so there are two very different approaches for transformation.
I saw this database, this open source database start showing up in some benchmarking reports that was like giving us a run for the money. And like, MemSQL single store, like our whole thing was like speed and like, we're going to do whatever it takes to be fast. And then like this sort of random couple of like graduate students, academics in the Netherlands were like, we're getting pretty close out of nowhere. And I'm like, somebody should really take that and build a serverless, cloud version of it. And I'm like, hey, I've built 2 SaaS databases, and maybe that should be me. And kind of thought about it a little more, and I sort of tripped and fell, and Martin, offered me a term sheet, and I realized that not every founder's journey is, fundraising journey is that way, but I sort of stumbled into starting a database company. And so originally, I went to Hannes and Mark, and who were the creators of DuckDB, and I said like, hey, what you guys have built is amazing. Will you give me a job? And like, I'd love to sort of work with you and build a SaaS service. You're probably building a SaaS service. And they said, we don't want to build a SaaS service. We just want to focus on building this amazing database, but we'll partner with you. So we gave them a co-founder share of the company. As we did it, they gave us, an exclusive. They weren't going to work with anybody else that was competing with us. And then we also funded some of the development of DuckDB, which I think is actually a really, really nice and a stable division of labor between open source and closed source, because we are unapologetically a company that wants to make money, and our investors would like to hear that, because they've invested a decent amount of money in us. But DuckDB, DuckDB Labs, they get to focus on the idealist sort of building an amazing database.
User-facing analytics. So that's kind of the term that we coined, which is really very different when you actually get into the weeds of it. Is your users are not going to wait for a page to load for seconds, right? I mean, it's okay in the data warehouse internal use cases because you don't have the option. But when you serve something to your end users, you got to be in milliseconds. Since most of our users are user-facing applications, so that means they're building applications for their end users. And there, people actually do click this, then go do this, then click this. I think a lot of these tools are actually becoming conversational apps. Some of our customers have just thrown away their dashboards, just built a conversational app on top of it. And I think to Jordan's point, it's actually possible in our case because it's restricted.
And I first heard about it actually from my little brother, who was working at Uber at that time. And they were having issues scaling their analytics platform. They were using Elastic and Splunk and some other things. And they did a bake-off. And they tried all sorts of different databases and technologies to see which one would work best. And ClickHouse was by far, in a way, the best system. They just outperformed everything else, head and shoulders above. Companies like Uber and eBay and Microsoft and others just kept adopting it and talking about it. And then in 21, when an opportunity came up to take the IP and bring over the team of original ClickHouse developers and build a business around it and create a cloud service around it, it was a no-brainer. Like when you start with really, really great technology, everything else is easy. In the cloud, when we first created the company and decided to build a cloud product, we chose a very different architecture under the hood. So we moved away from shared nothing to compute and storage separation, where the data sits in object storage like S3 or GCS, and the compute nodes are completely stateless. You can do idling. You can even do things like compute separation, where you have different compute clusters for different use cases, like separating reads and writes. And because it's serverless, it scales up and down. You only pay for what you use, and it actually ends up being cheaper. And on top of it, our cloud product, we've added a whole bunch of security features like cloud native identity and access management, RBAC, bring your own key,